Hello and welcome to my channel if you're new here, and welcome back if you've been here before. For today's video, I'm doing a clean with me and cook with me. I start in the kitchen with cleaning that up, and then I move on to starting a pumpkin roll, and then I go from there into my family room to clean up that room while the pumpkin roll was cooking. So hopefully I gave you lots of cleaning inspiration today, as well as some cooking inspiration, especially if you are ever thinking about making a pumpkin roll. Then you can sort of cook with me in this video and clean with me in the cleaning portions. So as I often do, I started in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher and getting it ready to wash, and then hand washing anything in the sink that needed to be hand washed, because I've noticed that while I can load up the dishwasher, I can't have it running and hand wash dishes in the sink and run the garbage disposal, because apparently there's a conflict between having the dishwasher going and washing in the sink and running the garbage disposal. Will pretty much make everything come back up through the drain. So I just learned to make sure that I get everything that needs to be into the dishwasher, and anything that's left I hand wash, and once everything's hand washed, then I'll start the dishwasher and get all the dishes in there washed. So I'm just pretty much loading up the dishwasher so that way I know what I have left that I need to hand wash, and then can get that washed. And once that's all finished, then I can go ahead and start the dishwasher. So that's my usual routine of load the dishwasher, hand wash anything that needs to be hand washed, and then after that I usually move on to wiping down the counters and the stove before I go over to clean the sink. So right now I'm just getting anything that needs to go into the dishwasher into there, and then after that I'll go to hand washing any of the items that need to be hand washed, and put anything up that's in the drying rack, so that way the drying rack is clear from any of the previously washed items and is ready for the new hand washed items. So at this point I pretty much have everything that needed to be put up from the drying rack put up, and everything that needed to go into the dishwasher in there. So I'm just going to get ready to hand wash everything that needs hand washed, and I'm clearing out the little the bubble up dish for the sponge, getting all the old water and any soap and residue and any food particles that might have fallen into the bottom there out, and getting that ready. And I also, I think, washed out the bottom tray there that holds it, because some of the water that had spilled out from the bubble up dishes was sitting in there, and just it needed a little bit of a cleaning itself. So I got that cleaned and rinsed and ready to go, so that way I could put the soap on top of the bubble up dish and then put the hot water in there, so that way it was all ready to soap up the sponge and hand wash the dishes. Now, while I was cleaning, my husband and my daughter were in the family room, which is right off of the kitchen, so I was chatting back and forth with them as I was cleaning. So now that the dishes are done, I'm moving on to wiping down the counters, and I'm going to use the Mrs. Meyer's Honeysuckle Multi-Surface Spray. I absolutely love this scent. It reminds me a lot of the honeysuckle bushes that used to grow in my backyard when I was growing up. And so I'm using that on the counter and the tile backsplash, and I'll also use it on the stove. This is also the same scent that I use in the dish soap, and I have the hand soap too, but I haven't used that yet just because hand soap goes so quickly and I don't want to open it up and then just use it all up already. So I have been using the multi-surface spray, which I actually got the concentrated refill container. So that bottle's been refilled twice now, I think. But I'm using that, and when I wash the dishes, I use the dish soap by the same brand and scent. And wiping down the toaster, and then I'm going to wipe down all of that area of the counter, and then I'll move everything back to their spot and move over to the next section of the counter, and after that is the stove. And now that the cleaning part is done, it's on to the cooking part. And while I've eaten many pumpkin rolls before, I've never made one. So this is sort of an adventure for me into making a pumpkin roll. So there I'm getting the eggs. The recipe called for 3 eggs and they were supposed to be beaten beforehand. So I'm just getting the eggs cracked and put into the bowl there. I made sure to get all the ingredients out ahead of time. So it's going to be the eggs and the cinnamon and the sugar all going into this, and then the pumpkin naturally will go into that bowl. And then I have another bowl slightly off to the side there on the other side of the mixer, and that is where I'm going to put the dry ingredients according to the recipe. So that'll have the flour and the baking soda in it. But so yeah, I started out. I got the recipe actually off of allrecipes.com, so I'll link that down below in case you're interested in that. But it was my first time making one, and it was kind of an adventure. It was much easier than I thought it would be, since I'd never made one before. But and there I am. I believe it was a half a cup of sugar. Or was it 1 cup of sugar? I think it was 1 cup of sugar. 1 cup of sugar went into the recipe. But like I said, I'll link the recipe below. So if you've not made one before and you're looking for a good pumpkin roll recipe, this one turned out really, really good. It was delicious, in fact. So which was exciting for me because I've eaten them before, but I've never made them. So to have the first one I did turn out so good really made me happy. Now, by all rights, as you'll see later on in the video, it didn't look exactly like I anticipated, but it tasted really good. My husband's eaten quite a few in his time too, and he said that it tasted perfect. It just looked a little bit different. Now over to the dry ingredients. So this bowl is the one that I'm going to put the flour and the baking soda into. I actually just filled my flour jar that day. So I wanted to be particularly careful with not spilling flour all over the place, since that is so easy to do. So I decided to get a large spoon out and scoop the flour from the jar into the measuring cup to try and make as little mess as possible. And so this is where I'll measure out the flour for the recipe, and then after that I will get the baking soda and put that into the bowl and mix that together so that way I can start combining everything together to really get this pumpkin roll going. So to make mixing easier, I decided initially to put in just a little bit of the flour mixture and mix that into the rest of the batter, if you will. And then I just went ahead and dumped the whole bowl in because I figured I had enough incorporated that the sort of liquidy part of the mixture wasn't going to go splashing around as I mixed it in. So I put the first part in just to sort of give it some substance, and then I put all of it in order to just mix it all together since I didn't think it was going to go splashing everywhere. And it certainly thickened it up, and it gave the batter a nice substance, if you will. It wasn't too thick, wasn't too thin, and it actually mixed really well together. Now that I'm done mixing all the ingredients together, I am going to prepare the pan. So I got a pan out. I thought it was going to be big enough, but it turns out it was a little bit on the small side, which if you've made a pumpkin roll before, you probably can eyeball that and see that right now. But just because it had been sitting in the cabinet, I gave it a nice little wipe down, and then I got some of the butter from off the counter, and I tried spreading it initially with a fork, but that just wasn't going to do the job efficiently, so I went ahead and just sort of gave the pan a good wipe down with the butter to make sure that the batter didn't stick to the pan, and it did come out in the end quite nicely, so the butter did its job certainly. But I kind of discovered with this that you need a longer pan. That while I thought this pan would be sufficient because it had the sides on it and I've made cookies in it before, apparently you need a pan that is slightly longer, maybe a little bit wider, but definitely slightly longer to make a pumpkin roll, because the batter cooked up nicely in this, but it made also for a thicker cake than I was anticipating. So yeah, I'm gonna have to get another pan and try this again sometime, because while the pumpkin roll turned out tasting great, it was a bit on the thick side. Now that I have all the batter in the pan, I'm going to move the mixing bowl over to the sink and give that a good rinsing, so that way when I go to wash it, it's not as hard to wash. I usually use the sprayer on the sink to give most dishes a nice little spray down before I wash them, because it's almost like, power washing the dish, and it gets a lot of the food off before I even have to worry about actually scrubbing it. So I just gave it a really quick wash there, since I had the soap already from having washed the dishes, and got the bowl all cleaned up. And then after that, I went ahead and grabbed the pumpkin roll and, well, the batter for it in the pan, and I put that into the oven, and I already had the oven set at 350 degrees, so it was ready to go. So I checked the pumpkin roll a few times after the timer would go off, because initially I set it for 15 minutes and then I set it for 5-minute increments after that. And I think because of the pan being a little bit on the smaller side, it made it take longer, so it actually took around 30 to 35 minutes to cook this. But then the toothpicks finally came out clean, so I knew that it was done and ready. So I got it out of the oven, and then I was looking for a spatula. I didn't want to use the same one I'd used during cooking, and I thought I had another one like it, but I couldn't find it. So I went ahead and grabbed a slightly larger one and used that to go around the edges, just to make sure that the pumpkin roll was loosened up from the edges of the pan, so that way when I went to get it out, it wouldn't stick. Back when I used to take the Wilton cake making classes, that was one of the things that they taught us about, when you take a cake out of the oven, to initially go around the edges to make sure that it was loosened up, so that way as it was cooling, it didn't stick to the sides. So that way you didn't have as much of a problem getting the cake out of the pan when you went to get it out when it was finally cool. And so now this is after I'd dumped the cake out of the pan. I had the towel laying out. The instructions said to get a non-terry tea towel. So I found one of those in the drawer, and I got that out, and I laid the cake on it, and as you can see here, it rolled up nicely enough. It was still a bit on the thick side, but still rolled up nicely enough, and it said to lay it seam side down while it cooled, and that really took a while for that thing to cool. So I went back periodically, and I would check it and move it from one spot to another on the counter, since I could feel the counter heating up underneath it. That way I figured I'd give it a new spot, maybe it would help it cool down sooner. But it took a while for this to cool down, so I went ahead and made the icing, the filling, to go inside of it while it was cooling. So that was a package of cream cheese, and then the confectioner's sugar or powdered sugar, and then there was vanilla and 2 tablespoons of butter that was added into it. So the 2 tablespoons was the butter, not the vanilla. I had a little vanilla left in the bottle, so I just dumped what was left in there. I'm not sure that was the full amount that the recipe called for, but the mixture still tasted delicious because, well, cream cheese mixed with confectioner's sugar and butter is gonna taste good regardless. So now that I have all the ingredients in the bowl, I'm mixing it together. It took a little while to get everything to break down, so I actually used the pulsing feature on the mixer first, and then once I felt like I'd gotten it broken down enough, I started just using the lowest speed and mixing it together. And at that point it was nice and smooth and mixed really nicely, and I sampled a little bit of it off one of the mixers, and yeah, it tasted really good. So now over to the family room to tidy up. Basically I start with just sort of organizing the toys. She has a cute little purse there that has some items that go in it, so I was making sure to put those in there and then organize the other toys around on the mat. And she has little rattle and noisemaker toys that go in the container that I just put them in, and then there's the play food container that she has, which I don't think anything was actually out of that one, but I'm just organizing that and clearing stuff off of the end table because I make rosaries, and so while I'm sitting in the family room, sometimes I'll sit next to that table and make the rosaries, and then I'll keep the stuff there if I have to jump up and go do something until the next time I come back and work on the rosary. So here I'm just sort of organizing the toys, putting the ones that go back into their containers into the containers, putting her little doll into her walker stroller, and grabbing her little rosary and putting that into the Mega Bloks container because that's where we keep that, and then putting up her sippy cup, and just basically straightening out the toys, getting water bottles that were left in the room out of there off the floor. And now I'm going to dust the coffee table. First I wiped it down just to get anything extra off of it, and then I'll spray it down with it's the Method Daily Wood Cleaner and Sweet Almond, and it does a great job, and I really love the smell of this stuff. So I got that like I got the Mrs. Meyer's products off of Grove Collaborative, and actually when you do your first purchase there, you get a free trial of the VIP, and so with the VIP you get free shipping on your orders, which is really nice. And then they're always sending you little free items here and there when you buy stuff from them. So cleared off the coffee table, going over to the end table to clear my rosary making supplies off of there, and then I'll clear anything else off of there, and I'm going to dust that too, and then spray that where it looks like it needs a little bit of cleaning to get that cleaned up. Far back there I'm actually cleaning off, I'm dusting and then cleaning with the Method wood spray the DVD holder. We have two of them in the family room, and so this one doesn't get cleaned off as often because, well, we don't use this one as often, but I noticed it was a bit dusty on top, so I took everything off of that and dusted it down with my duster and then sprayed it with the Method wood cleaner, and now I'm putting everything back up on that since it's now all nice and dust free and cleaned off. while I was cleaning, my husband actually got a call, so I grabbed his phone real quick and ran that to him since he had left his phone on the charger, and then back into the family room where I decided to go ahead and remove all the toys from the foam tiles so I could vacuum the foam tiles and get any dirt that had somehow gotten into the room off of them. I think probably it's stuff that's blowing out from the vents because we rent this house and we have a no shoe policy in the house, so it's not like anyone's walking into the family room with their shoes on to drag in any dirt. So I'm guessing that maybe it's blowing in from the vents because that's really the only explanation that makes sense. But I pulled that out a bit so that way I could make sure to vacuum over by the entertainment center anything that might have gotten underneath the foam tiles, and then I'll put them back after I get that area vacuumed and try and vacuum the front part. And I'm going underneath the blinds a little bit there and trying to get behind her toys where I put them off while vacuuming. But I'll put the foam blocks back and sort of refit them together because there's that one block that popped off on the corner. And then I'll finish up the vacuuming and putting the toys back on the mat. And now that I got everything dusted and vacuumed and the toys all back in their little spots on the playmat, I'm going to go over to the couch and fold up the blanket. We have a crocheted Afghan, and then we have a small down comforter. It's a really small one. It's not really the size that you'd have on a bed, but it's a perfect size for snuggling under on the couch. So we keep the crocheted blanket and then the little comforter on the couch, so depending on how cool it is, we'll pull either of those down and cover ourselves with that because it's a nice little bit of warmth, and this is one of the cooler rooms in the house during the winter and the warmer rooms in the house during the summer. So it's that nice little extra added layer of warmth and comfort. Now back over to the pumpkin roll. So at this point it's cooled sufficiently, so I'm going to unroll it and put the sort of icing filling stuff in it. And as you can see, it's on the thick side, so it was a little bit hard to unroll, and it kind of wanted to split a little bit. But otherwise, the texture of it turned out really good. So I'm just sort of slapping the filling in there and trying to smooth it out as best I can because the roll is a little bit on the stiff side. I think, according to my husband, it's just because of the fact that it cooked in a slightly shorter pan, and so therefore was a little bit on the thicker side. So I'm gonna have to get another pan for this and try it again. But yeah, I'm just sort of kind of smoothing the icing stuff inside of it and trying to smooth that out so that way I can sort of attempt to roll it back up. And here I'm getting out the plastic wrap because initially I was considering putting the plastic wrap over it like the instructions suggested, but then I asked my husband if he wanted a slice, so he said yeah, that he'd want one. So rather than wrapping in the plastic wrap, I decided to go ahead and just cut it and serve him the first slice, and then I ended up getting a slice for myself. And after a few slices had been taken out of it, it turned out there was a container that we had, a storage container for the refrigerator, that it fit into perfectly. So here I am. I'm just cutting him a nice slice from the end, so that way he can have the first slice. And then after that, I'll get myself a slice, and then then I decided whether or not to put it in the containers. That's when I opted out of the plastic wrap and just decided to go ahead and put it in the plastic container. I finally paused and got myself a slice of the pumpkin roll, and let me tell you, it was really, really good. Definitely going to try and get another pan to make it thinner next time, but taste-wise, it really did turn out. And let me tell you, there's a few things as awkward as eating on camera because you can chew, but you can't really talk. So I thank you for watching this video. If you haven't yet, please click subscribe down below, and if you liked it, please click like, and I hope to see you again in some future videos.